think one of the things that's really exciting about being here at the CSD and being part of the major groups is the learning that's unfolding amongst the various representatives of the different major groups. Mm-hmm. The sense is that you're here to lobby a position or put forth your idea. And what I'm discovering more and more is that really our role, particularly within the Baha'i international community, but certainly not exclusively, is that people are sincerely trying to build unity of thought around the thematic issues of the CSD. Now with that, because you can imagine everyone comes to the table with different thoughts and ideas, there's a lot of opportunity for participation, to express your opinions, but what we're trying to do is just crystallize it to what is the most essential message, the key word, the key idea that you want to share with a delegation or with all of the delegations. And so there's no shortage of ideas, for sure, but what there is a challenge to articulate clearly what is the key idea or the key thought. So what I'm seeing and what I'm being able to participate in and what I'm learning about is how to crystallize this complexity of all of these issues into a couple of nice, clear thoughts expressed in clear language that will actually be useful to the delegations. Now, why is that important? Because one of the features of the CSD that is really, I think, quite unique is the involvement of the stakeholders, which is the involvement of the major groups. We have entry points where we're allowed to engage with each other and to participate in the main sessions and contribute ideas from the major groups, but we're also given the opportunity to express language and thoughts directly to country delegations. And what that is doing, of course, is it's building a unity of thought. So we're able to take their very diverse opinions and ideas and try and crystallize it to what is the core principles and ideas behind it that need to be articulated in clear language and inserted into the text of what will come out as the policy recommendations from the CSD. So there's a whole bunch of different things that are active here. One is participation. One of the unique things about the CSD, the Commission on Sustainable Development, is the engagement of the different major groups as stakeholders. So it's not so much about an us and a them, because we're all engaged in this process. Yeah, it's clear that there's a separation between the governments and the delegations and what the other stakeholders bring to the table, but it's important that that dialogue exists, that opportunity for interaction exists, and that again is one of the features of the CSD. To be able to participate in that process is really about learning to participate in the discourse that is most relevant to the sustainable development agenda that the planet is facing right now. So with that comes responsibilities. You can't just go and fall asleep in the sessions. You need to pay attention. You need to look for the nuance, and you need to be thinking, but you need to be consulting. You need to be going out and talking with people from different countries, from different NGOs, from different organizations, and people from different perspectives. So to talk to youth, to talk to women, to talk to business, to talk to the scientific and technology community. You take an issue like biofuels, and it is a huge issue that has so many different competing interests, but everyone here is trying to figure out that middle ground, not to water it down but to get to the core issues that we can agree upon and try and understand it through the lens of sustainable development. So in that process, you're really articulating values, you're articulating the guiding principles that need to be brought to bear on all of these subjects. And again, it's about harmonizing the opinions of a whole bunch of different stakeholders. It's not just about lobbying. I think that people have this perception that you go to the UN as an NGO and you're there to lobby your position. I don't think so. I think that lobbying is parlance that's used to explain another function, and that function is really the higher order one of trying to build unity of thought. I think one of the interesting changes for me this year, last year was a review session, this year's a policy session, so we're really trying to focus on language. But one of the things that was very interesting was within the NGO major group, the points that it wanted to talk about on the very first or second day they put out in a table to say these are the issues, and this is the emerging consensus of all the different opinions that the NGO group and other stakeholders from the other groups have on these issues. So that table became sort of a living document, and every day we go back and we look at it, and we can see how we're refining little pieces of our discourse on each of these issues. So it became sort of an organic or a living document that allows you then every day to look at this and to go back and in your conversations with members from different delegations or members of other major groups to share that perspective. But what's neat is that that perspective is now one that is one step towards consensus. It's no longer just disparate thoughts, because every day you're trying to bring more lucidity, more clarity to the points that are being expressed. So that's a significant change. The youth this year, they were great. They put together, I don't want to say a platform, but they articulated 7 core principles that are designed to guide, inform, and shape the contribution that the youth are making to any country delegation. So any youth or any member of any of the major group stakeholders can read that. It's published, it's accessible, it's available, and you can say this represents all of the youth representatives here through the Youth Caucus, a perspective, but that is shared. And that's something that I think is quite distinct this year. Likewise, the level of cooperation amongst and between some of the major groups, like the Women's Caucus, the Youth Caucus, and the NGO major group, there has been more harmonizing of opinion and focus on key issues amongst those 3 groups. And, I think Indigenous people and farmers as well have been quite involved in that process. It hasn't necessarily reached out to all yet, but I think that part of the learning process is that it will. So I think as a unique contribution that I've seen sort of evolve and emerge at this commission, that would be something that stands out. Well, I guess I can speak to one concrete example, and that's the Canadian delegation, because as a Canadian I've had greater access to that. And I'm just struck by their openness to receive language. You can submit on any subject, on any paragraph of the text. You can submit ideas on rewording of that text, and they write back, and they don't make any commitment or promises to use it, but they are thoughtful responses that further elucidate some of the issues from their perspective, but generally they're very open and thankful. So that reframes the whole question of what the NGO, typically you might think that NGO and government, that they're sort of an us and a them. But I think that the level of sincerity of the people involved in both of these 2 universes, they're struggling with the same issue. There's no question about the concern for sustainable development and some of the underlying principles. How that gets expressed and negotiated in a way that everyone shares a common understanding, that involves consultation. So the fact that they're open to it, and I think the EU, I think even the G77, they have been willing to engage the major groups on the question of language and on what should and shouldn't be in the major text. And again, that's one of the unique features of the CSD, is the number of opportunities and the openness of country delegations to receive input from the NGOs. But I would say one of the nice features of this CSD is that NGOs have been able to establish some common language amongst themselves, so that it's one contribution from the NGO working group as opposed to 200 NGOs each representing their own thoughts.